a new budget label and shoot 'em up action with Terra Cognita. Here we are, look, the ChinnyVision shelves are back up so we can actually pick our game from the shelf. Today we're looking at Terra Cognita, which is one of the first games released by Codemasters, set up by the Darling brothers, Richard and David. Absolutely brilliant and all that. Previously had done games for Mastertronic as well as other software publishers, mainly Mastertronic though in the years leading up to Codemasters being set up, and indeed they took a Mastertronic author with them to Codemasters to publish Terra Cognita. Stephen Curtis, who wrote NonTerraqueous and Soul of a Robot, huge sellers for Mastertronic. Starting off on the specking, that wasn't obvious already. So you are a spaceship, has to transverse 100 screens or 100 screen lengths. You have fuel, which you need to replenish by picking up the F icons. And there's plus icons that make you go faster and minus icons that go slower. And there's bonuses that make this entire game stop seemingly for a few seconds while it screams bonus at you. So just shooting some enemies here. And just kind of going along. It's kind of fairly generic at the same month that Light Force came out. And oh dear, look, we've been guided into a dead end. Yes, Terra Cognita is a bit of a memory test. You need to remember where you are on the map because you are liable to run into a dead end. You may also need to remember which power-ups you need to pick up at specific times, although you may be forced to pick up power-ups like those pluses there. The pluses and minuses also impact how your fuel is used. The graphics are a little bit messy in that it can be sometimes difficult to see what you're actually supposed to be, well, avoiding or hitting. It's quite tight in some sections. Over to the C16. Yes, there is a C16 version. One of only 3 or 4 C16 games released by Codemasters. Very, very smooth. The sprites move around smoothly. They do flicker a bit. And the screen's... Oh, no. You see what's happened here? Do you see... Oh, no. Yes, there's icons that will send you back to the start as well. So I would have got trapped there, but I hit an icon that sends you back to the start. The game levels are about 10 minutes in length, or the entire game. So you can be 9 minutes into the game, hit one of the icons that sends you back to the start, and boy, that's fun. Crash gave the game 71%. And said it's not a good idea to play this on keyboard, which I would kind of endorse that. I tried to play it on the keyboard on the +4. It was not fun. And it won't be on any other versions either. C64 version. And interestingly, these sprites, or the enemy sprites, move around more jerkily on the C64 than they do on the C16. Your sprite is high res. Oh, that's gone badly. How many lives? Oh, no, I do have infinite lives. Just as well, because I'm doing quite badly. I have forwarded this on, so we don't have to do the same section of the level again. It's a very quick reaction game, which on capture delay isn't much fun, but I suspect it wasn't much fun back in the day either. It did get good reviews, though, released at $1.99. Reviews seem to be favourable. Modern reviews are not so kind. As I pointed out, it is a bit of a memory test. Some of the squeezes are very tight. And look, here we are on the CPC version with the only Mode 2 loading screen that I can think of. CPC's 2-colour 80-column mode. Interesting. It's 100 screens makes it sound weird because it's not flick screen. It is just 100 screen lengths, so we are jerking along a bit on the CPC. Very beefy sound effects, which I feel like I've heard before. Are they lifted directly from NonTerraqueous? Or another game I'm familiar with? The game actually mentions that it is kind of a sequel to NonTerraqueous. Can't really see how. This feels like a very quickly thrown together game compared to Soul of a Robot and NonTerraqueous, which are different, more in-depth games. It's a very simple shoot 'em up. Don't touch the L because you will go back to the start. You're going to squeeze through. Oh! Yeah, there's quite a lot of that. The game is short, and I hate these bonuses because they stop the entire game and then you'll pause for a few seconds, and then when you come back in, inevitably something terrible will happen to you. It's not always obvious what you're supposed to be touching or trying over. The instructions say something about if it flashes and it's not a launch pad, avoid it. Well, I can't really see. Yeah. By the way, on the Spectrum version, I am now using a cheat. It was ZX Guesser who got this poked for me, but he did poke a Spanish version, so we're now all in Spanish. C16, it moves very, very quickly. I'm cheating now. I turned the collision detection off, which is just as well because it's very, very hard at the fastest speed, but at least we can see further into the game. C64 version, oh, we've got a bonus. It's paused. The colour scheme's nice. It's very competent for a budget game. It's just, it feels too difficult and very unfair and a big old memory test. I think it's a game that perhaps is more of a high score challenge game than you will complete it, even though it's about 9 minutes long. And therefore we should perhaps judge it as a high score challenge game because there's no depth here at all. Amstrad Computer User reviewed the game with Nigel, Liz and Colin, who, as I've mentioned before, all one person. I think the most realistic one here is Colin, who gave it 13 out of 20. He said if you want to shoot 'em up, get a good one, and this one isn't it. Liz points out, again the same person, you need to learn the routes through the game. But that's quite a big ask because you've got 100 screens here in effect, or 100 screen vertical kind of duration things. It is equally playable on all these versions, and I say equally playable in that they all suffer from the same problem. You think the scrolling, and I'm dying a lot here, but I really don't care. I just want to get through to the end. It's the same memory test. It's exactly the same layout, exactly the same problems. Being thrown back to the start with the L icons, hitting stuff that you're not sure you can hit or not, and just generally. There we go. In mode 2 screen again, we'll read this. Looking close to the tiny scout ship, the magnificent outline of the mothership hid the stars. Automatic sensors flashed while they scanned, identified and then guided the scout ship onto the main docking pod. With a great display of light, the mothership threw cleansing rays at the small craft. After this standard space procedure, both the scout ship and the docking pad disappeared into the mouth of the mothership. I'm going to stop reading this now. It says NonTerraqueous. Oh, NonTerraqueous 5 is going to be the sequel. Terra Cognita is one of Codemasters' first budget games, potentially the 6th if you read the number on the side of the spine the way I did. If you're expecting the kind of Stephen Curtis game you got with NonTerraqueous, then you'll be mistaken. This is a very basic shoot 'em up that's also a memory test. The game's short, it's also very, very hard and a little bit unfair when it throws you back to the start or just requires you to get through incredibly tight spaces. Of all of these, the C16 version is actually the one that stands out. To do this in 16K and have better sprite movement than the 64 is a real achievement. There's no more depth to the game, it's no better, it's just as difficult, but it is well implemented. The Spectrum version, it gets a bit too messy, as Crash pointed out in their review, when you're flying over things, trying to work out what you're supposed to be flying over and what you're supposed to be avoiding. The Amstrad version is colourful, slightly jerky as scrolling, but it plays perfectly well. It is unspectacular, as is the C64 version. High-res sprite, nice scrolling, jerky enemy sprites for no reason, but there's no depth of gameplay here. I didn't have a great time playing it. Don't get me wrong, Terra Cognita isn't awful, and if you're putting out your first batch of games to release on a new label, then it is a perfectly competent game. But in 2021, really, you could be playing Light Force or many other shoot-'em-up games that are far, far better than this. Unless, of course, you've got a C16, which, although the game's got the same faults, I really do like the presentation, and I like the fact they've done it all in just 16K.